Hello everyone. My name is Elise. Welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing so good today. We are reacting to the National Book Award long list for translated literature, as the title of this video would suggest. I did a video about this last year. I'm always interested to see what gets selected for the translated section. I know a lot of people cover the fiction one. That's well and good. That one's interesting as well, but my heart belongs to the translated category. So I've already looked at them. I was shocked in some ways. I think like when I first opened it up, I just gasped when I saw the pictures of everything that had been nominated. So we're gonna go ahead and get into the nominations, but quickly before we get there, I'm just gonna talk a little bit about the eligibility requirements for this category in particular, because this category has different eligibility requirements than the other 4 categories that are listed. So for the translated literature category, it can be either fiction or nonfiction. It can also include short story collections, but it has to be what it says is like a complete work. So what that means, I'm not totally sure. I think that's trying to weed out novellas, honestly. But yeah, those are length and structure qualifications for things that can be nominated. Also, for the translated section, you do not need to be a US citizen like you do for the other categories or be living in the US. It just has to be that your work is published between December 1st of the previous year, so 2022, through the end of November for 2023, and you need to be alive at the time that time period starts. And then also you need to be published by a US publisher in English in that time. That will come up because some of the books here have been nominated for prizes in other countries for other years, but they just got their English publication, so now they're showing up again. So there might be some familiar faces to some of you. So we're gonna go ahead and get into all the books just like rapid fire, and then we're gonna talk about the synopses and some of the through lines that the judges are talking about with the selections that they've made. And I will say the panel of judges is 5 people, always chaired by someone in particular. I believe this year the chair is Jeremy Tiang for the translated category. So there is that. So the 10 books that have been longlisted, which will be whittled down to a 5-book shortlist on October 3rd, so not that far away. They do not leave a lot of leeway time between the long list and the short list. And then the winner will be announced on November 15th. So a good amount of time before the winner is going to be announced. I'm going to try and read some of these, but we shall see. So starting off with the 10 long listed books, we have one that I own. I haven't even hauled this yet because it just got published and I received it like a week ago. And that is The Devil of the Provinces. This is by Juan Cárdenas and it's translated by Lizzie Davis. This is published by Coffee House Press and I highly anticipated this. I pre-ordered it. It was originally going to be a part of the spring kind of summer subscription for Coffee House Press and it got delayed a little bit. So I just pre-ordered it anyway because I knew I really wanted it. So this is the first selection. We'll get to the synopses again in a little bit. Next up, we have Cursed Bunny by Bora Chung. This is translated from the Korean by Anton Hur. And this one is just being published in the US earlier in the year from Algonquin Books. A lot of people have read the Hanford Star edition, which is the edition that I have read. I have read this book, and that's the edition that I own. That was on the International Booker last year, but now it's published by Algonquin Books in the US and is why it's eligible to be here. And I really enjoyed this short story collection. I do think that it kind of deserves its place on prizes, but again, we'll get into that in a little bit. Next up, we have Beyond the Door of No Return by David Diop. This is translated from the French by Sam Taylor and published by FSG. This is kind of I would say a bigger release in the translated world, just because David Diop has won the International Booker previously for At Night All Blood is Black. So that one is on here, not surprised about that one. Next up we have Kairos by Jenny Erpenbeck. This is translated from the German by Michael Hofmann and published by New Directions. Next we have The Words That Remain. This is by Stênio Gardel. I'm probably saying that incorrectly. And that's translated from the Portuguese by Bruna, Dantas, Lobato and published by New Vessel. We have No One Prayed Over Their Graves, translated from the Arabic by Leri Price, published by FSG as well. We have This Is Not Miami by Fernanda Melchor, translated from the Spanish by Sophie Hughes, published by New Directions. We have Abyss by Pilar Quintana. This is translated from the Spanish by Lisa Dillman and published by One World. Next we have On a Woman's Madness by Astrid Roemer, translated from the Dutch by Lucy Scott, published by Two Lines Press. And lastly, we have The Most Secret Memory of Men, translated from the French by Laura Vergnaud, published by Other Press. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about what each of these books is about. Just briefly, I'm going to be reading what they have on the National Book Award website, and that also talks about some of the through lines and themes that are showing up in this year's long list, which I think is always very, very interesting. So as you can tell already, I've only read one of the books that have been longlisted. I own 3 additional books, the ones that I lifted up, and 3 of the books I've never even heard of that have been on the long list before. So there are 7 different languages represented on this long list, and I think 3 of the authors have previously been nominated for the National Book Award in this category. So those are some of the little stats. So firstly, it says that there are 3 books on this long list that are sort of between the boundaries of fiction and reality, and it's questioning where art sort of like begins and ends. And I think that's pretty fascinating. The first one that it mentions here is David Diop's book. And this says that it's about a famous French botanist who dies in the early 1800s, and his daughter discovers his unpublished memoir, which reveals his hidden past, chasing the story of Miriam, who is a young noblewoman who escaped slavery in West Africa. And it's talking about the brutality of the French colonial occupation and the consequences of obsession, love, and betrayal. This book does sound very interesting to me. I want to read it. I figured that it would probably be on this list, and it's been on my radar since it is a bigger release. I will probably be able to pick this one up from my library, but I'm definitely interested in this one, and if I enjoy it, I will be buying a copy. I have not read At Night All Blood is Back. I own it, and I haven't read it yet, so that might be good to get to first, but definitely really interested in this one. It sounds right up my alley. So that is Beyond the Door of No Return. The other one that it has in this category is The Devil of the Provinces. Obviously, I said before, I really want to read this one. This one is sort of promoted as a crime novel of sorts. It has a mystery at the center of the plot, and it has an unnamed narrator who returns to their native Colombia after 15 years being abroad. And then he finds himself entangled in his brother's unsolved murder while he's substitute teaching at a boarding school where girls give birth to peculiar creatures. And that is really what sold me in the synopsis. It sounds very creepy and ominous. I love a good crime novel, and this author is very well renowned, and I've never read any of his work before, so definitely interested to get to this one. And the last one it has in this category of blurring the lines between fiction and reality is The Most Secret Memory of Men. And this says that it follows a Paris-based Senegalese novelist enamored with a literary mystery, the disappearance of Black Rimbad. It says it seeks to bring his long-lost novel to a new generation of readers. So I think there is a real-life writer named Yambo Olagum. That's way off, I already know. and the narrator in the book is trying to track down the reclusive writer, again based off a real person, and that's sort of the central mystery of the book, and he's trying to revitalize the people and being interested about his work. So definitely intrigued about that one as well. I know I love a mystery, so that could be a real winner for me. So far, all three of the ones that I've talked about sound great. Next up, it says that 2 of the novels have child narrators, one of those being Abyss. This is by Pilar Quintana, and this has an 8-year-old narrator named Claudia who's trying to make sense of the world by observing the adults around her, particularly her aunt and her father. She also has a depressed mother who's obsessed with celebrity gossip, and I think that just sounds like such a fascinating set of characters. And I think it is interesting when a child is trying to make sense of the world around them through adults, but the adults are so messy and have no idea what they're doing. I think it just makes for like a fascinating drama to spin around. So that is Abyss. All right, and then we have 2 story collections kind of on the list. The first one being This Is Not Miami by Fernanda Melchor. Now this is, I think, technically published as a set of essays, but they're like essays-ish. So it's blurring the line again between kind of fiction and reality. So I believe that this is interviews that she has with people. So it's sort of a retelling, but it's like word of mouth. So whether or not this is totally factually accurate, you know, who knows? But it's kind of labeled under that nonfiction category because it is interviews. So this is, for now, a collection of essays. And this is talking about how violence can shape adults and societies. And I have heard that this is very violent, but somewhat of a different tone and vein than maybe her previous 2 novels, and that's why I'm interested in it. The other thing that really gets me interested in this is it's trying to understand the motivations of killers and misfits and other criminals, and trying to invite you to decide, like, are these people actually monsters, or are some of the other people in the periphery of their stories actually monsters? And I love that central question. So very much intrigued about this. And then the other short story collection that has to do with violence as well is the one by Bora Chung, Cursed Bunny. Again, I've read this, I really enjoyed it, and it does in fact center this idea of violence and what happens when violence can be a means to obtaining something that you really want or maybe even need, and how that can affect somebody's character and make them do things that they never thought they could have been capable of. And I really appreciate the collection for that. I highly enjoyed it, and I'm very happy to see it on this list. And I'm very curious to see how it interacts with this one. So those are the 2 story collections. And then there's 2 novels that are set in South America, and they're focusing on queer narrators. And they actually are even more similar than that once we get into it, because I think they also follow older narrators. So the first one is The Words That Remain, and this follows a narrator who is in his 70s, and he receives a letter from a childhood friend and lover, which basically resurfaces a bunch of these intense memories of their time together. And it's all about his first love and his impoverished upbringing in northern Brazil. So he, I think, is kind of reflecting back on that experience and talking about like queer desire, violence, shame, those types of things. And yeah, sounds very interesting. Again, I'm already so interested in all of these, so that's definitely a good sign. And then the other one that is kind of bolstered together is On a Woman's Madness, and this one follows a queer Black woman who's trying to escape her hometown and her abusive husband just 9 days after she gets married to him. And she ends up fleeing. She's determined to try and live a life for herself and of her own choosing. And she ends up in Suriname. And then she starts a romance with an older woman, and it's about their romance together. I think it's also following colonial themes as well, like some of the other books on this list. So those are the 2 kind of ones following queer narrators in particular some older queer narrators. Very excited. On a Whim's Madness is one that has been on my radar because it has been a big push from Two Lines Press this year, so I'm not surprised to see it in this category, but we can get into that a little bit later. So next up, we have a grouping together of characters who are chasing personal freedom as their worlds collapse. And these are 2 novels that are listed in this category. No One Prayed Over Their Graves, which follows 2 friends who find their lives upended when a flood destroys their homes and kills most of the people in their town, including a lot of their family. It's about them trying to reimagine their lives after tragedy, and it says that it's a testament to faith, place, and the meaning of home. That one does sound interesting as well, but maybe lesser so just for my personal taste, but who knows, it still sounds decent. And then the next one in this category is Kairos by Jenny Erpenbeck. I'm also not surprised to see this here because this had a huge push from its publisher as well. And this follows the story of a tumultuous romance, and it begins in East Berlin in the 1980s when a 19-year-old begins an affair with a 50-year-old. And this is part of why I have not picked this book up so far, is that age gap, while I don't know how it's going to be portrayed in the book, is just icky and I don't like it. And the way that the synopsis portrays it, it doesn't sound like it's labeling it as problematic. So I am questionable about this one. It says that this novel demonstrates the parallels between personal and political identities and explains the tensions between pleasure and pain, submission and domination, and the East and the West. So the themes sound good, but again, don't love that big age gap romance. That might just not work for me. So who knows? And those are the books that have been longlisted thus far. The books were whittled down from 154 nominations for this category. And I will say, I don't think the National Book Award has the same regulation that, say, the Booker does, where a publisher can only get 1 submission. I think you can pay for as many submissions as you would like, as long as you pay and submit 6 copies of the book. So if somebody else has a different understanding of that, please let me know. I tried researching it and I couldn't find anything saying there was a limit to the number of submissions per publisher. And like, for example, New Directions has 2 books in this long list. FSG has 2 books in this long list. So part of me is like, okay, some of these smaller presses, maybe they don't have the money to do a lot of submissions and they just picked 1. Like for Coffee House Press, I was not expecting this to be the submission that they would do if they only did 1, but who knows, maybe they did multiple. So again, please let me know if you know that. I am intrigued about most of the books listed here, so that's very exciting for me. I'll try and see which ones I can get my hands on from the library, and then obviously I also have 3 additional ones to read here as well. Part of me, whenever this happens and I'm excited about the books, is like, oh my god, I should try and read them right away. Who knows if that will actually happen. But yeah, I'm really excited about this long list. Can't wait to see what the short list is. And please let me know what you thought of any of these books. If you've read them, tell me more. Did you like them? And we'll see what ends up getting shortlisted on October 3rd. And with that, I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.